on KTRS.
It's 7:51. Kelly Jackson, Jay Kensler filling in for McGraw Millhaven. And we are joined by U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Senator McCaskill.
Thanks. Good morning to you, Jay and Kelly. It's
good morning.
Good to visit with both of you.
Thank you for giving us the time. There's a lot going on for all of the members of Congress. Tell us about the first month of the Trump administration, the first month of this Congress being involved with the administration.
Well, it's a struggle. Obviously, it's been chaotic. I think most people would agree with that. Even though the president says it hasn't been. There have been fits and starts. There have been cabinet members nominated without being fully vetted, many of them with very complex and large financial holdings, which typically take longer because of the need to go through all those finances and determine if there's any conflict of interest in the subject matter where they will be having so much power. So it has certainly not been smooth. I think the Republicans are having a difficult time coming together behind the legislative priorities they've given the American people. It's been, almost 7 years they've been saying repeal and replace, and we still have no indication of what a replace would look like for the health care bill that so many Missourians are now relying on. Same thing with the tax reform. There seems to be a lot of disagreement within the Republican Party about what form it should take. And infrastructure, same problem. A lot of disagreement among Republicans about whether to follow whatever plan the president has versus their own ideas. So I think they've got a lot of things to work out, and hopefully they will do some things that we can work with them on. But so far, it's been really difficult to work with them on anything.
U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill has joined us this morning. Senator McCaskill, on that issue of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, something close to my heart, what is the likelihood that we will have a repeal of Obamacare or some kind of replacement or fix to it?
Well, I think the pressure is certainly on the Republican Party, who has made repealing Obamacare the beginning and the end of every campaign they've run since the law was put in place.
But how do you repeal? How do you repeal something that millions and millions of people rely upon for their health care without just disrupting the apple cart?
I think that's the problem they're facing. I think it's the dog that caught the bus, except in this instance, the bus is like 6 trains and an 18-wheeler, and they don't really know what to do because it's very difficult to. The problem is, I think people forget, this bill wasn't passed in a vacuum. This bill was passed because everywhere I went, when I was campaigning for the Senate in my very first term, everyone said, you've got to do something about health care. Everyone's health care was going up an average of 10 to 15% a year before this bill was passed, and people who had pre-existing conditions had no place to get insurance. The high-risk pools were not working, and the individual market, which is a small market in our country, most people still get their health insurance at work, but the people who don't have health insurance at work, the people who work 3 minimum wage jobs to try to support their families, had no place to be able to buy health care. So we were trying to fix a very, very broken system. And frankly, there's some things we could do to improve the Affordable Care Act, but the Republicans have not been interested in doing that because they've seen this as such a powerful political weapon over the last 7 years. Well, they've used it as a political weapon, and now it's up to them to try to make the changes that they have promised. And I think they're having a great deal of difficulty.
You recently, Senator McCaskill, visited the U.S.-Mexico border, and immigration these days is a big issue. What are your insights as to where we're headed with our relationship with Mexico and on the issue of immigration?
Well, I think people need to realize that overall, illegal immigration is down significantly over the last 8 years. Fewer people, we measure immigration by apprehensions, and fewer people have been apprehended over the last 8 years because fewer people are showing up, and most importantly, more people have been deported. And those people who have been deported have been, in fact, people who have committed crimes in this country. I think that President Trump is trying to expand his deportation efforts. And what I learned on the border, which was very interesting, is the Border Patrol is the first to say that a wall all across the border is not going to be effective and, frankly, is not practical. There are so many private property owners that are not going to want their property condemned. There's a lot of river. I was above the border in a helicopter, and this is a river border for miles upon miles upon miles. So what the Border Patrol said they needed was, yes, some wall. There is some walling that is needed in certain places, but more technology and more lateral road access to some parts of the really rough terrain that is adjacent to the border along the Rio Grande Valley River. So it is not as simple as build a wall. It is much more complicated than that, and I hope that we have an opportunity to weigh in on the president's policies in a way that will save the taxpayers' money, enforce the security of our southern border, but also not disrupt our economy, and also make sure we are not disrupting families, especially those with children who have never known any country other than the United States of America.
Recently, a number of Jewish centers have been threatened with bomb threats, including in St. Louis. And most recently, Vice President Pence came to town, and he visited the Jewish cemetery in University City. What are your thoughts on St. Louis making national news because of that incident in U City?
Well, it is, it's terrible. It's certainly not representative of the people of St. Louis. I hope they catch whoever did that. That kind of hateful actions is that's not what our country's about. And I was glad the president finally spoke out broadly about anti-Semitism and about racism. I think he has to realize that sometimes when he's asked questions, it's not about him. It's about our country. Every question he takes, he makes it about Donald Trump or his election. This is a divided country, and it desperately needs a leader who can speak to that division and heal that division rather than stoking it. And I'm glad that Vice President Pence and Governor Greitens went to the cemetery yesterday. I think that's great. I hope we have more activity that would signal to everyone. We had a shooting in Kansas City last night. The first reports, although none of this has been confirmed yet, the first reports is that this is the suspect was engaging in racial slurs, and that two of the people that were victims may have appeared to be somebody other than a Caucasian. And, we've got to really focus on the fact that our country should be proud of the way all people have been welcome here. And that's why we are such a strong nation and have been in the past and so admired by the rest of the world. I hate to give up that spot on the Hill.
Absolutely. U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill, thank you so much for joining us today.
You bet. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
Scrap traffic.